I, 47 male, and my wife, 46 female, had been married for 17 years when we got divorced. I met her in college. We were good friends at first, but after a while, I developed a bit of a crush on her, and I asked her out. We dated for a few years before she ended up getting pregnant. When our son was 3 years old, we ended up getting married. In total, we've been together for 23 years. From all of the years we had been together, I thought we were happy and in love. We watched all of our friends go through countless struggles with their relationships, while we remained steady throughout everything. The only issue that ever really arose for us was the fact that my wife liked the attention of other men. It was something that I felt insecure about at first, but over the years I had gotten used to it. As far as I was aware, she never did anything with other men, but she would get dressed up to go places because she knew she would be catching their eyes. She would flirt with bartenders or waiters to get free things at restaurants. She told me that it made her feel confident and sexy, and after giving birth and getting a bit older, she was having issues with her confidence. I did everything in my power to assure her that I thought she was the most beautiful woman on the planet. She just wanted to be desired by other people. It made her feel like she had this feminine power, and she didn't want to lose it. My wife was very good looking. She took care of herself, going to the gym regularly, taking care of her skin and hair, and wearing clothes that aligned with the latest trends. I always thought that I was very lucky to have her. We only had one child together, our son. Sending him off to college was difficult for my wife and me. We had gotten so used to him being around the house that everything felt empty without him there. It was a hard pill to swallow, but he was moving on with his life, and there wasn't anything we could do about it. When we dropped him off the first semester of his freshman year, I was very aware that his roommate was surprised at how his mother looked.
My wife caught on to that as well.
On the car ride home, she kept laughing about how she felt like the hottest girl in the world. We made jokes about it, and I never thought anything would really come of it. His university was a 6-hour drive away from us, so when we went to pick him up at the end of the fall semester, I kind of assumed that my wife would dress for a road trip. We were going beyond the road for 12 hours, and it was probably expected to be wearing sweaters and comfortable pants, things like that. Instead, she got dolled up to go pick our son up. She wore tight jeans and a t-shirt that exposed a lot of her cleavage. She was wearing makeup, and she curled her hair in the morning. I didn't quite understand why she was making such an effort to go pick him up. Part of me knew that it was because she wanted the boys and his dorm to pay attention to her, and it kind of weirded me out. Thankfully, when we arrived, a lot of the students had already left for the winter breaks, so she didn't get as much of the validation that I thought she wanted. However, our son's roommate was still there. He was very clearly attracted to my wife, and he kept staring at her while we were helping my son pack his things. It was honestly something that I was considering addressing with her when we got home, but my son beat me to it. On the car ride back, he told my wife that he wasn't happy with how she dressed around some of the guys in his college. She promised him that she would make sure to cover up in the future, almost shrugging it off like it was a joke in some ways. I could see that my son was actually embarrassed by how his friends reacted to her. I didn't like that she was playing it off like it wasn't a big deal. When we got home later that evening, I continued the conversation with her. I told her that it was starting to make me uncomfortable, and she was acting somewhat defensive about it. Instead of getting into an argument, we both just dropped it and figured we would deal with it when the time came in the future. A couple of years passed, and our son was a junior in college. Regardless of how my wife dressed, I went to pick him up and drop them off. Some of his friends and roommates still made comments about how she looked. She listened to what we said and stopped wearing such revealing clothes, but it didn't help. At the end of his junior year, we went to help him move out of his apartment off campus. We drove to the university and helped him load everything into my truck as we always did. He was living in an apartment with 3 other guys, one of whom was the roommate that he had during his freshman year. On the car ride back, he asked us if it was okay for one of his friends to come visit for a week. There was a film festival nearby that they both wanted to go to, and I said that it would be fine. My wife agreed with that. A few weeks passed while our son was home, and we were drawing closer to his friend coming to visit. In those weeks, my wife was on her phone a lot more than she normally was. She was texting with someone, and every now and then I would hear her on the phone whispering. I had no idea who she was talking to. One night, my wife was in the shower, and I went in to brush my teeth. I saw through the glass shower door that she had her phone in the shower with her, and she was recording herself. She stopped when I walked in, but it was obvious what she was doing and denied it when I said. It looked like she was recording herself. Our son's friends came to visit for the week as we expected, and everything started out normal. I could see that he was extra nice to my wife because he was obviously attracted to her. I figured that my son would be with him during the day, so it never occurred to me that my wife would have any alone time with him. We had a pool at our house that my wife used quite often. In the summer months, she would swim in it regularly for exercise as well as use it for recreation. I came home from work one day and I saw my wife outside in a very small bikini with our son's friend. They were both in the pool, playing around with each other and splashing water in each other's faces. They kept diving under the water and grabbing each other to pull them under. It looked like they were just looking for an excuse to touch each other. Neither of them noticed me coming right away, so I hid from them. I didn't want them to see me because I was curious about what exactly was happening with them. We had cameras in the backyard, so instead of going outside, I went into my office and logged in to watch the cameras live. Neither of them had any idea that I was home, much less watching them. I saw them, as clear as day, both go under the water and kiss each other. When they came back up, my wife looked around the pool area to make sure the coast was clear, then kissed him again. I could faintly hear what they were talking about through the audio, but they were saying something about how glad they were to finally have some time along. Right after that, my wife started touching him and reaching inside his swim trunks. He said something about not being sure they had the time, but my wife told him that she thought it was even hotter because of that. They finished what they were doing, and my wife told him that she would visit him in the guest room after I went to bed. My gut had told me that there was something going on with her that I didn't know. I hated seeing that I was right to think that. We had been together for a very long time, and I trusted her more than anyone in the world. And she broke that. I didn't know if they had slept together already, but it was clear that they were planning on it. What they did in the pool was already cheating, but they were about to take it even further. They both told off and went inside, and I quickly turned off the footage and made it looked like I was busy doing something for work. My wife walked by the office and commented on how she had no idea I was home. I tried to cover my emotions and play it off like I had just walked in the door. She came to me about an hour later and told me that it was time for dinner, but I lied and told her I wasn't feeling well and was just going to focus on work instead. I couldn't stomach being around her. I knew that I was going to catch her in the act with our son's friend later that night. And I didn't think I was going to be able to pretend to be okay with everything. All I needed was to get the evidence to prove that she was having an affair. I pretended to go to sleep around the time that I usually did. My wife climbed into bed next to me and stayed there for about half an hour while I pretended to sleep. When she thought I was completely out, she quietly climbed out of the bed and left. I waited about 5 minutes and made my way to the guest room that they were both in. They were clearly trying to be quiet on the other end, but I could hear the squeaking of the bed frame underneath them. I pulled out my phone camera and started recording so I could open the door quickly and have the video evidence that I caught them. I opened the door and saw my wife naked and on top of our son's friend, having sex with him. They were both shocked when I opened the door, and my wife quickly jumped off of him to run over to me. I had already started walking away from the room when she caught up to me. She was trying to whisper and be as quiet as possible about the entire ordeal to avoid waking up her son, but I yelled back at her. I told her that I didn't understand how she could do that, especially with our son's friend. It didn't take long for our son to wake up and stand in his doorway, asking us about what was going on. I looked at my wife and waited for her to explain to him what she'd been doing. When she told him what happened, my son rushed into the room where his friend was and tried to attack him. He yelled at him and called him a myriad of names that I can't repeat here. I ended up breaking them up and taking my son out of the house because he was so frustrated. I understood where he was coming from, but I didn't want him to get in trouble. We were gone for about an hour, just driving around and letting off some steam. When we got back to the house, his friend was gone. He packed all of his things and driven off. My son yelled at his mother, telling her that what she did was wrong and she should have been ashamed. She cheated on a man who had stood by her for almost 25 years for somebody half her age. My wife ended up realizing that there wasn't going to be a way to smooth over what she did, so she left the night and booked herself a hotel room. In the morning, I had a conversation with my son to tell him that because of what happened, I would be leaving his mother. He completely understood, and he told me that if I hadn't gone to him about it, he would have suggested it himself. I could see that my son was almost as hurt as I was about everything. Not only was his mother cheating and their parents getting divorced, but one of his best friends was now out of his life because of it. I felt immensely bad for him, and I couldn't believe that his mother would do something like that to him. I started the divorce proceedings and prepared myself for anything that might come my way. My son told his other roommates about what happened and that he didn't want to live in an apartment with his old friend anymore. Because they were renting an apartment off campus, they agreed that they wouldn't be living with him. They sent him a message and told him that he would have to find another housing auction. When it got closer to time to drop my son back off at school, we realized that his friend had to move back into on-campus housing. Because it was so last minute, he ended up living with a nightmare roommate who couldn't find anybody else to live with them. On top of that, the on-campus housing was almost twice as expensive as renting an apartment off campus as they planned, so he was forced to take out several extra loans to cover the cost. Having had to pay off my own student loans, I knew that was going to bite him in the butt
for quite some time.
As for my wife, we did get divorced. She didn't work. She was a homemaker, so she was forced to get a job and start taking care of herself. I was awarded the house and I ended up selling it because I didn't need everything that was in there. I bought a much smaller house in a different neighborhood with enough room for my son and me. He seemed to really like it when I showed it to him over the winter break. Now he has graduated college and I am living in the new house by myself. My son is living in an apartment by himself in the city for his job. It's been about a year and a half since everything happened, and I'm trying to get myself back out there. I spent almost 25 years with my ex-wife, and I don't know how to date moving forward. Your wife was extremely selfish in her actions, and I think her need for attention from other men escalated. I don't know what it was about your son's roommate in particular that caused her to take a step forward in that direction, but it did. Her desire to have male attention in general was already concerning given what she did for it. It seems like your son was very close with the man she slept with, too. Having an affair is already bad enough, but with your son's friend is just awful. I can't even begin to imagine how he must feel about her after everything. I understand if he's angry and doesn't want anything to do with her. Karma really bit both your wife and your son's friend in the butt in the end. You're right, he is going to be paying off those excess student loans for quite some time, and I'm sure he's really going to regret his actions because of that. Now let's move on to our next story. My girlfriend and I have been together since high school. I loved her and I genuinely thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with her. She and I always had an opposites attract kind of relationship.
I'm very outgoing.
Athletic and into sports. She's a bit of a nerd. She spends all of her time reading. She gets very involved in internet fandoms, and she isn't as interested in working out. We started dating during the last semester of our senior year in high school when we repaired up in a science lab together. We lived in a small town and I knew who she was, but I hadn't paid much mind to her. I got to talking to her in the lab and I felt a connection to her that I couldn't really explain. We had been together ever since. We went to different colleges, but we stayed loyal to each other and saw each other as often as possible. After we both graduated, we moved into our first apartment together. We both got jobs. She landed her dream job as a teacher, and I worked at a tech company. We spent a lot of time together, and we tried to share each other's interests. We both had a hard time getting into some of the things the other liked. She was very involved in a lot of online forums and pages dedicated to some of the fandoms she was in. She met a lot of online friends through those places, and she talked to them more than almost anybody else that she knew. My girlfriend had always wanted to try cosplaying. There were a ton of characters that she was interested in, and when a convention was in our area, she decided she wanted to do it. She dressed up and really found that she loved doing it. I ended up going to the convention with her because she was too nervous to go alone. Dozens of people approached her and told her about how much they loved her costume, and she was having the time of her life. After that, she started doing it all the time. Even when there wasn't a convention, she was hyperfixing on characters she wanted to cosplay as, and she would toy around with makeup and clothes to try and make the costumes. As she got more into cosplaying, I noticed that some of her outfits were a little bit more revealing. They showed off more of her body, and they started turning into hypersexual versions of characters. She took a lot of pictures in them, and she always did, despite how I told her I wasn't comfortable with her sharing the images. She told me that they were only being sent to her longtime friends and that it wasn't anything I should worry about. I trusted her, so I believed what she said. Several months went by, and a large convention was coming to her city. I didn't have a good time at the last convention I attended with her, so I didn't really want to go, but I would have if she wanted me to. She told me that because the convention was a big deal, one of her friends for her Discord group was going to be attending. When I asked about the friend, my girlfriend gave me the name Jamie, which I now know isn't real, and used they slash them pronouns when speaking about them. I didn't want asked outright about them, but my girlfriend had a lot of non-binary and transgender friends, so I kind of assumed that it was something like that. I never thought she was purposefully withholding using the pronouns he slashed him to try to deceive me. The time came for the convention, and I just assumed that everything was normal between us, and she was meeting up with an online friend. It all seemed very harmless to me. She was rushing around the apartment in the morning trying to get ready and communicate with her friend to make sure they were on the same page about where to meet. I helped her put some last-minute pieces together for her costume and said goodbye to her before she left. I was lying in bed thinking about going back to sleep for an hour when I kept hearing notifications go off on her laptop. It was annoying me, so I got up to see what it was. Her laptop was open on her desk and her room like it was 90% of the time. This time, instead of turning her laptop off, she put it to sleep. I rubbed my hand along the trackpad, and it lit up showing me her Discord account. There were dozens of messages in there from people in groups she was in. I was a little bit curious, and I know it was somewhat of an invasion of privacy, but I sat down and took a peek at the server. I saw that she was on countless servers on Discord, which I already knew about, but some of them were NSF-BOS servers. That was a surprise to me. There were messages popping up on the corner of the screen with people painting her and telling her about how good she looked. I assumed she posted a picture of herself in the cosplay that I helped her with that morning. I clicked on one of the servers that people were tagging her in, and I saw that she posted a picture of herself in the costume. She was standing in front of a bathroom mirror and lifting up her shirt. There were a lot of people in the server saying very explicit things about what they wanted to do to her. I looked through the history she had in it and saw that she had been posting very similar things a lot. Through the server and her private messages, I was able to figure out that the person she was meeting was in fact a guy, and she had every intention of sleeping with him. They were both going to be dressed up in character, and they were going to post a video for the server. I took a lot of screenshots of the things that I found and sent all those to myself. While I was doing that, she sent in another picture of her with the guy that she was meeting at the convention. There were people in the server who already knew what was happening, and they were putting in specific requests for things for them to do when they hooked up. It was all really weird. My girlfriend liked a lot of the comments and promised people that they were going to be in for a show. I kept my eye on the server for the rest of the day, curious to see what exactly was going to happen. When I wasn't checking on that, I was packing up my belongings to move out. Even if she wasn't having sex with another man, everything that she was sending to strangers on the internet felt like a violation of our relationship. On top of that, she had hidden all of it away from me, so it felt like she was lying. I got a lot of my things together and prepared to leave by the end of the day. I was going to go crash at a friend's house until I could find another apartment. Towards the end of the day, my girlfriend sent a link to the server for anyone to click on. When I clicked on it, I saw that it was a full sex tape. She hooked up with the guy that she had gone there with. I didn't understand her motive in making this tape and sending it to all of these people. It was a private link, so it wasn't on any kind of site where she could monetize it. There didn't seem to be a reason other than the fact that she wanted people to watch her. I didn't know what was happening. I felt humiliated, and I wanted to find a way to get back at her for what she did. I wanted to get back at the guy she was with as well. I looked through their messages and figured out who he was and what he did for a living. I found his social media pages and saw that he was in a new relationship with someone back home. I gathered all the information that I could, and I sent the link to the video alongside some screenshots of their conversations to the guy's girlfriend back home. Right away, she read the messages. She responded a couple of hours later, thanking me for bringing that to her attention, and I hadn't spoken to her since. I left the apartment that night and didn't plan on going back. My girlfriend returned home later in the evening and sent me dozens of messages asking me about where I was. I didn't respond to them. What I did instead was reach out to the principal of the school she taught for, and I informed them of her online behavior. Because she was a teacher, things like that were prohibited. I knew that what she was doing was likely to cost her her job. A few days after I sent the email, I got a call from the superintendent of schools asking me for more information about it. Eventually, she was fired. She reached out to me countless times and begged me to revoke the statements that I made and tell them that I was just saying it out of spite, but I didn't do that. I wanted her to suffer for what she did. If losing the job she cared so much about was that, so be it. Now I am working and trying to figure out my next steps moving forward. I really did love her, and it's going to take a while for me to get past what happened. It seems like you cared about your girlfriend and wanted her to be happy. You went out of your way to go to conventions with her and help her with her cosplays, even though you weren't interested in it. Sharing sexual photos with men online is definitely a violation of your relationship. It doesn't matter if she never met a single one of them in person. She was sending intimate photos to them. The fact that she met up with a stranger to sleep with them at the convention is already bad enough. But then recording it and posting it in Discord is weird. I'm glad you told the man's girlfriend about it. It's best that she knew before continuing the relationship. It's also good that your girlfriend lost her job. It is a direct consequence of her actions, but it doesn't seem like she sees it that way. I hope you are taking care of yourself and able to recover from this soon. I wish you nothing but the best. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.